I started hearing whispers whenever I looked in a mirror. It began the night I broke my bathroom mirror. Not on purpose, though that's exactly what anyone would assume if they could have seen me then. Barefoot on the tile at 3 in the morning, hair knotted, breathing like I was drowning in air. I had only been trying to wipe away condensation after a shower, just a normal motion, but my hand slipped. The cloth caught the edge of the glass, and a hairline crack leapt across my reflection, like lightning. Before I could curse or laugh it off, the faintest sound came from the mirror itself, a sigh so thin it could have been water running through pipes. I froze. The mirror sighed again. It whispered my name. My name isn't the kind you mistake for another. Rasa carries softly, but the voice in that fogged glass stretched it in a way that dragged my stomach into knots, elongated the A until it became almost a moan. I stared, waiting for logic to explain it. Maybe wind through the half-open window. Maybe the old radiator giving up a death rattle. But the room was still, damp, and terribly awake. I didn't tell anyone. You learn, when you've spent a lifetime being dramatic, that silence attracts less pity. I cleaned up the shards and told myself the noise had belonged to the moment of impact. A squeal of stress through enamel. Yet the next evening, when I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror while passing to the kitchen, the air around my face shimmered faintly, like heat above asphalt. Under the hum of the refrigerator, a whisper crawled out again. I couldn't make out words, only cadence, the lurking music of human breath shaped into almost words. 3 nights later, phrases began to bloom in it. The first was "look closer." I should have smashed every mirror in the apartment right then, but curiosity has a cruel sense of humor. The hallway glass wasn't cracked, perfectly clean, yet I leaned forward, foolishly obeying. My reflection's pupils didn't mirror mine. For a beat of heartbeats they dilated slower, later, as if whatever was looking back needed a moment to remember how to mimic me. Then it smiled when I didn't. I stumbled backward until the frame rattled on its hook. The whisper returned, honey slow, weaving through the air like smoke. Not yet. I ran out and spent the night on the couch, ignoring every reflective surface, phone screen, black TV. Window at dawn, showing a faint outline of a woman staring back. Work helped. 8 hours, stacked under fluorescent lights in a research library, cataloging antique manuscripts, where even polished marble had long since dulled. But even there, reflections found me. The glass surface over the archivist's desk reflected the curve of my jaw, and when I glanced down one afternoon, a series of letters had fogged across it, as if exhaled by invisible lungs. Come home. No one else saw them. By the time I called my colleague over, the glass was clear. He gave me that careful smile people reserve for those teetering near the edge. I tried to trace it. Maybe some neurological thing. Aural hallucinations connected to sight. A trick of perception. I booked an appointment. Took notes. Pretended my life could be categorized. But each night, the whispers grew bolder, using my old secrets like currency. They reminded me of things I'd done as a child. Cruel whispers whispered back to me in a voice that wasn't quite mine. Stealing my sister's bracelet. Lying about the fire in the woods. Watching my father's hand drip blood when he punched the wall one winter and saying nothing. The mirror fed on memory. Or maybe I was feeding it. By the 10th day, keeping lights on didn't help. Reflections shimmered in every dark surface, angles bending wrong, corners bending deeper than corners should. When I blinked, the echo of myself in glass blinked afterward. The whisper became 2 voices now, a dialogue that threaded through my own breathing. One scolding, one coaxing, both too intimate to be strangers. Do you remember? They asked from behind the fog every time I faced the bathroom. Do you remember what you promised? The worst part, I did remember something, though not clearly. I was 7, crying in front of that same bathroom mirror after the fire in the woods. My sister had gone missing for an hour before wandering back, covered in ash, muttering about seeing someone who looked like me crouched among the trees. That evening I'd stood at the sink, whispering into my own reflection, swearing I'd find her twin shadow if she ever got lost again. Little girl promises don't fade, apparently. I tried covering every mirror with towels. It didn't matter. The voice adjusted, muffled but persistent. You called me Rosa. It breathed through layers of cotton. Now listen. So I listened. When I pulled the towel away weeks later, writing crusted the mirror's surface in fine dust, like the residue left by rainwater when it dries. One of us must stay. The handwriting, if dust can have handwriting, was a mirrored copy of mine. That was the first time I screamed, a real, raw sound that left iron in my mouth. The neighbors must have heard, but nobody knocked. Silence seeped back, thicker than before. I turned away, hungry for normal life, washing dishes, feeding my cat, but the slice of light in the window over the sink held movement independent of me. The whispers were now full sentences, coaxing, explaining things I didn't understand but half believed. They said the reflection world was only a degree out of phase, that every glance was an open door, that I had left something on the other side long ago, the twin of my own heartbeat. I wanted to tell Claire, my best friend since college, about it. I almost did over coffee. She touched my wrist gently and said, "You really don't look good, Rose. Maybe you should sleep more." Her reflection in the cafe window didn't match the rhythm of her blink either. That was the moment I stopped trying to confide in anyone. The final straw came one stormy evening, when a power surge snuffed all lights at once. In the black glass of my living room window, the city outside rolled with thunderclouds. Lightning flashed, and for that instant, the reflection staring back wasn't me, but someone slightly older, face streaked with something dark like soot. My lips never moved, but the reflected mouth did. It whispered clearly, perfectly audible even through the storm, "Let's trade." Then came the soft scrape of glass flexing. My own reflection pressed its palm flat against the inside of the window pane in invitation. I backed away, heart battering my ribs, and reached for my phone to light the room. The screen lit, and there she was, again, faintly in the reflective black around the icons, smiling. In that instant, all the whispers converged into one echoing phrase, filling the apartment's corners. "Come back where you belong." Every mirror trembled on the walls, cracks spiderwebbed outward from the edges, as though something behind them was pressing for escape. I grabbed my coat and fled into the stairwell, leaving doors unlocked, lights flickering behind me. Outside, rain hammered asphalt like fingertips on glass. Every puddle glimmered with the same faint glow. Every one held a mouth opening underwater, trying to speak. Amen. That's where the first part ends. Me standing in the street under relentless rain, surrounded by reflections whispering my name from every shining surface, each voice promising that the next time I looked directly into a mirror, something on the other side would answer fully. The rain fell for 3 days without rest. Or at least, that's how it felt. On the second morning, I woke in a rented basement room with no windows, just to be safe. The air thick with mildew and the distant throb of pipes. Mirrors were impossible here. Bare bulb, concrete walls, a sink stained with rust. My reflection existed only in memory, half believed, half feared. I should have felt safe. Instead, the absence of mirrors made the whispers louder, as if they were tired of waiting and had decided to crawl directly into my thoughts. They didn't come from any direction. They bloomed behind my ears, soft, deliberate syllables. You can't hide from yourself, Rosa. SP. I shouted once, just to make the sound of my own voice heavier than theirs. But even my shout returned to me thinner, warped. I spent hours pacing, muttering nonsense, counting reasons I wasn't mad. By evening, exhaustion dragged me toward the small mirror hidden inside my wallet. Its corner reflected a sliver of my cheek when I pulled out my ID. I didn't mean to look. The flash of light caught my eye, and the breath in my lungs snagged. For an instant, the reflection was simply mine, pale and scared. Then, something darker swam just behind it, as if a second layer of me hesitated to surface. The tiny mirror fogged, despite the fact that the room was dry. On the film of moisture, a single word appeared. Thirsty. I dropped the wallet like it bit me, and it clattered onto the concrete. Inside my chest, my heartbeat stumbled, restarted, stumbled again. Like a record arm stuck in place, the whispers came back, hushed, intent. Infected, my nose was coming, a small speck of pain and discomfort. Something warm trickled from my nose, not blood exactly, a thin, clear fluid that tasted like salt and iron when it reached my lips. The voice matched the movement precisely this time. Please. I couldn't tell which one of us spoke first. That night, I dreamed of mirrors, a corridor lined with hundreds, stretching farther than any hallway should. Each mirror held a version of me paused mid-breath. Older, younger, crueler, kind. When I moved, they did not. When I tried to look away, their eyes followed. Far at the corridor's end, one version stepped forward and pressed her hand to the glass. My entire body recognized the gesture as my own apology from childhood. Her lips formed the words I already dreaded. One of us must stay. I woke, with the taste of river water in my mouth. Something had broken loose inside my skull. I could feel the memory moving like a current. The day my sister vanished in the woods, the smell of smoke, a half-forgotten scream that might have been mine. I had stood before the bathroom mirror afterward, crying, whispering her name until the light bent. A second shape had formed beside my reflection, and an answer had come back, small and patient. I'll trade places a while, so you don't have to hurt. That was the moment I must have made the bargain. Whatever had crossed through then had never left completely. Armed with half clarity, I went back home. Foolish, maybe, but I needed evidence. Something material to prove this wasn't only noise inside my head. My apartment smelled wrong. Lemon cleaner, faintly sweet. The towels I'd nailed over the mirrors had slipped to the floor. The glass surfaces were pristine, waiting. I circled the rooms like an intruder in my own space, until exhaustion forced me toward the bathroom, the same one that had started everything. The mirror I had cracked now hung whole again, no break line visible. That, somehow, terrified me more than any crack. I stared into it. My reflection stared back. No delay this time. For half a second, I believed it was normal, down to the frightened twitch at the edge of my mouth. Then she smiled, lazy and deliberate, together with a sound like air being poured from a jar. "You came back," she whispered. I backed into the doorway, shaking my head. "You're not real." The reflection tilted her head. Same movement, perfectly mirrored. Neither are you when I'm awake. Her voice was smooth, weary, almost tender. The silver surface trembled as though it were liquid. I'm tired of being the shadow, Rosa. You promised we'd share. I told her I wasn't going crazy, that she was the product of trauma, exhaustion, whatever label the human brain uses to make terror digestible. She listened quietly, then lifted her hand and placed it flat against the other side of the glass. My skin prickled. The mirror wasn't cold anymore. It radiated faint warmth, like sun through ice. I watched my own hand rise to meet it, before I could stop myself. When the fingertips met, sensation reversed. Hers felt solid. Mine felt hollow, as if all the warmth was leaking toward her side. The phone on the sink vibrated suddenly, cutting the moment. Unknown caller. I jerked away and answered without thinking. Static. Then one clear phrase. Step through. The line went dead. When I looked back at the mirror, a thin line of condensation had traced itself vertically down the center, growing wider until the whole surface seemed to breathe. The reflection smiled again, a perfect copy, except her eyes were brighter, full of something like freedom. I'll take care of it, she said. You rest. My body moved before agreement. Maybe the choice had been made long ago. I fell, or was pulled forward. The glass bent around me, cool, pliant, swallowing sound. For a heartbeat, the world folded into silver light. Then nothing. I opened my eyes to find myself standing in the same bathroom, but mirrored. The faucet reversed, scar on the opposite cheek. Everything gleamed with unnatural clarity. The mirror in front of me was now opaque, showing only a faint shimmer. And on the other side, a shape, my shape, stood blinking, dazed, trapped behind the glass. She whispered something, hands pressed to the surface. I could read the words from her lips. Let me out. But the whisper no longer reached me. The apartment was hushed, comfortable. The air smelled of lemon cleaner again. For the first time in months, silence felt complete. I smiled, just to see if lips and muscles obeyed. They did. When I walked to the window, my reflection in the glass moved perfectly. No delay, no parasitic twin. Outside, the storm had cleared. The streets shimmered with mirrors of shallow puddles. I understood what hunger truly meant as I leaned closer to one on the sill, studying the dark water. From somewhere deep beneath its surface, a small voice began to rise, thin but urgent, my own voice calling from the other side. I touched the pane with curiosity instead of fear. The sound was pleasant, like breath on glass. Hush, I whispered, and the voice obeyed. Then, smiling, I closed the curtain over the reflection to muffle it completely. I have lived this way for 32 days now, if days even matter inside this shifting light, where every surface hums faintly, like a throat clearing before speech. The silence of the mirror world isn't pure silence. It breathes. It waits. At first, I thought I'd stepped into a perfect replica of home, some gentle dream made symmetrical, but the more I explored, the more wrongness bled through the seams. Every object casts a reflection of its own. Even shadows have shadows. When I stand very still, I can hear the pulse of hundreds of other rooms beyond mine. Endless corridors filled with their own residents, faces that might have once been faces like mine. I don't remember sleeping. I don't need to eat, though hunger comes and goes as memory. Sometimes I lift my palm to the mirror separating me from the old apartment. She's there often, my other self, the one who used to be voice without body. She lives easily now, wears my clothes, smiles at my friends. She doesn't seem wicked, merely relieved. I've watched her laugh into phone calls, cook, hum tunelessly while washing dishes. Every act she performs sends a faint echo through the silver world, a soft tremor of shared heartbeat. I should hate her for sealing me away, but hate feels dried out here. Only wondering remains. The space is enormous once your eyes adjust, the mirrors linked to one another, doors floating in mid-air that open into versions of my life I've forgotten living. Childhood rooms with toys arranged wrong, libraries of faces, half remembered, hallways where time folds over itself. I've walked for hours along one corridor lined with mirrors that play pieces of my own history on endless loop. Me, 7 years old, breaking my sister's bracelet. Me, 17, promising I would share if the whispers helped me keep a secret. Each replay quivers like candlelight. I used to scream at them to stop. Now they play like background music, and I narrate along, a tour guide in my own museum of mistakes. There are others here. I sense them as vibrations more than sight at first, muffled footsteps, faint laughter. One day a figure stepped from a distant surface. A woman who looked 20 years my senior, same jaw, same scar, reversed on the opposite cheek. She nodded as if greeting a colleague arriving late to work. "You're new," she said. "I suppose. She's let you take her place then." Her calmness disturbed me more than threat would have. "You've been here long?" "Long enough to stop counting. You'll learn to stop asking." I followed her through hallways whose walls rippled like liquid chrome. She showed me where the mirrors connect, the places where thoughts leak through from the living world. "They think of us as reflections," she said. "But we're the originals that stayed still too long." I didn't sleep that night. Her sentence twisted like glass in my mind. The originals that stayed still. What if everything I believed about the exchange was backward? What if this world wasn't a trap, but home? And the bright, hectic life outside was the trick. My mind began splitting along both possibilities, whispering to itself in counterpoint. For the first time, the whispers didn't sound foreign. They were all my voice. When I returned to the nearest mirror, my old apartment looked colder than before. The other me sat at the kitchen table writing in a notebook. I knocked. The sound resonated like a distant drum. She looked up sharply, eyes wide, then relaxed into a pitying smile and traced 2 words on the glass from her side. "Not yet." The realization sank quietly. She intended to keep the surface sealed forever. I don't know what balance she needs to preserve, what bargain keeps both worlds from collapsing, but I could feel the tension whenever she drew near. The mirror rippled between us like stretched skin, and for a heartbeat, her outline blended perfectly with mine, until I couldn't tell which side was which. I began experimenting, mapping the physics of this place. Reflections reflect reflections in endless regressions. If you catch the sequence at the right angle, you can step between them. Each time I pass, though some detail of me blurs, a freckle lost, a hair tone shifted, sometimes the rhythm of breathing. Pieces trade places with unseen parts. It doesn't hurt exactly. It feels like remembering a language you've never spoken. Days, or mirror days, later, the older woman found me again. "You've begun to see it," she said with weary satisfaction. "Soon you'll decide whether to stay still or cross." I thought crossing was impossible. Not if she looks up at the right moment and you whisper the right word. What word? She smiled with my own mouth. Her name. It took every shred of will to wait. One night I finally caught her gaze through the smooth divide. She was brushing her hair, humming. I whispered her name, Rosa, and the glass shivered. The hum choked off mid-note. She froze, recognition dawning, then stepped forward. "I felt that," she breathed. "You said you'd share." Her hand lifted almost unconsciously to the pane. When our palms met, the warmth traveled both ways. The silver film softened until it became liquid again. She closed her eyes and exhaled. So did I. For a moment we were both everywhere. In my apartment, in the mirror world, in the intersection between. Breath traded places like currency. When I opened my eyes, I was standing once more on the outside, but the air smelled faintly metallic, and the walls seemed to gleam from within. The mirror behind me was whole, calm, showing only my single steady reflection. I laughed, soundless and shaky, testing my own body under gravity. Everything felt heavier, real. Then the reflection blinked twice, though I had not. The faintest whisper trailed my movement. "Thank you for staying still." A neighbor knocked on my door later, asking if the work crews were using chemicals. She said every mirror in the building had fogged at the same time, and strange outlines were visible just beneath. I told her she imagined it. She laughed and left. Now each morning, I wake to soft fog on the bathroom glass, spelling a single word in the condensation. Remember. I wipe it away and the mirror remains just a mirror. Clear, obedient, quiet. But in bright light I notice the faintest shimmer, a pulse returning my heartbeat half a second late. Sometimes I touch the glass and feel warmth answer. It isn't fear anymore, it's recognition, like two halves of one breath finally in rhythm. I start the kettle. Catch my reflection moving perfectly with me, and for a second, we both smile the same slow smile. The whisper doesn't come from the glass anymore. It comes from inside my own ribs. "We're fine now," it says. And maybe we are.